Hey, thanks again for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. I'm Jeff Zito. This week, ranked number 3 on the Apple Podcast Music Interviews chart. So thank you so much for your continued support as we just hit the 200 episode milestone a few weeks ago. On Wednesday, we do the Celebrity Jobber Rewind, where we highlight an older episode that you might have missed. This past Wednesday, we dropped episode 141 with filmmaker Kevin Smith. So if you missed that one, be sure to check it out. Brand new episodes drop each and every Friday. And if you want to check out all of our past guests and episodes, you can do so by going to celebrityjobber.com. Streaming everywhere, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you stream your podcast. Please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. It's very important. Thank you very much. Would also love a 5-star rating. And if you could, please leave a comment and or a review. You can also follow on Instagram, celebrity_jobber_podcast, and some videos are up on youtube.com/the@celebrityjobber. So what was the plan for some of these celebrities before fame? Sometimes, I find it interesting where some of these people that I talk to, if they become famous at a young age, they didn't really have a backup plan because they were young and irresponsible. So it was just, fame or bust for a lot of these guys. But then again, some of them had different career paths. Maybe they intended on doing something completely different with their life. And then surprise, boom, they get a big break and they're off to the races. It's a pretty cool look at some of these celebrities' lives before fame. And we like to talk to them about their early jobs and their first job and some of the jobs that they had before they reached their level of success. So the Broken Lizard Comedy Troupe are the guys behind the Super Troopers movie, which, by the way, I'm a big fan of. And in previous episodes with Jay Chandrasekhar, episode 41, and Steve Lemmy, episode 178, we get into how the guys from the Broken Lizard Comedy Troupe all met in college at Colgate and the early days and the formation of the comedy troupe. So you might want to go back and check out a couple of those episodes, which can give you a little bit more of an in-depth look at how this whole thing kind of started and how they all met in college. It's a really fun story. Comedian Kevin Heffernan, who plays the role of Officer Rod Farva in the Super Troopers movies, gets to go to work and goof off with 4 of his college buddies, which sounds to me like a dream come true. But he might have had a more serious backup plan, which is definitely pretty interesting. We'll talk about what his big break was and, of course, what his early jobs were before he became Officer Rod Farva. You also know him from movies like Beer Fest, The Slammin' Salmon, Club Dread, and now Super Troopers 3 in theaters nationwide right now. Comedian Kevin Heffernan from the Broken Lizard Comedy Troupe is my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Howdy.
There he is, Kevin. How are you?
Jeff. Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I so wanted to go to the grocery store and pick up a liter cola, but I didn't.
Sure, I signed. We had a screening last night. I signed like 4 or 5 liters of cola for people.
Why is that? I mean, why is that so goddamn funny?
I don't know. I don't. It just really resonated. I don't know what it was, But
I never heard anybody order a liter cola before. But I think when you snap, it's just that type of comedy. To me is funny. So let's chat. This is exciting because I've been waiting for Super Troopers 3 for a long time. I've actually been talking about Super Troopers 3. I first started talking to Chandrasekhar about it before Super Troopers 2 even came out. So this is a lot of fun. So tell me a little bit, Kevin. I didn't know that your family comes from, they're very prestigious. Your father was a judge, your
Yeah.
grandfather was a mayor.
Yeah.
What did they think of your occupation? What did they think
Uh,
about your career path?
they didn't even understand it at first. I actually went to law school for a while, and I graduated, and I said to my dad, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm going to make movies. And he said, I can't even understand that. He said, you don't take the ball down to the goal line and not cross into the end zone. And I'm like, well, we're going to do this. And then what we learned is if I put my parents in the movie, it'll buy them off. So, and so we started putting my parents in all the movies, and it ended up working out. Now that they were very happy to be in the movies.
Yeah, I can see them not being very excited when you told them, hey, I know you spent all this money sending me to law school to become an attorney, but I think I'm going to pivot and goof around with my 4 college buddies and try to become a movie star. So yeah, that's pretty smart. Actually putting them in the movie, you might have bribed them a little bit for their support, kind of. Yes, brilliant. That's some good mind trickery right there.
Yeah. Bribery.
So you go to Colgate, then you said you go to law school. So was that like a backup plan where you're like, yeah, you know what, this comedy thing sounds fun. I'm gonna go mess around with the guys, do this improv thing, and if that doesn't work out, I'll be a lawyer. Was that what you were thinking, or no?
I think that was kind of it. I mean, there certainly is not the job security in the entertainment industry that you're looking for. So as you say, hey, I'm going to make movies with my buddies from college. It wasn't necessarily firm ground you're standing on. So my thought was, let's have this backup plan. And so I went forward for a few years, and then luckily, we made our first film, and then it took off from there. So
it's funny that the people that I talk to, usually when they start in their career and they hit it big early in their career, there was no backup plan because they're like 25 and they're like, fame or bust. So I kind of find it interesting that as a young guy, you did have the smarts to like kind of have a backup plan, and a pretty good one too. You weren't going to be a shower curtain salesman. You're going to be an attorney,
Sure.
So like that's, you must've been a pretty smart guy in school.
Well, it was more fear. I think more fear of failure than smarts. Maybe, I don't know. But we definitely all had that. Everyone kind of tried to figure out what they could do if it didn't work out, and luckily we just kept getting enough success to keep us in the game.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito.
Can you tell me about some jobs that you had before Officer Farva? Can you tell me about like some real jobs that you had outside of show business?
Yeah,
maybe before Broken Lizard took off.
I definitely worked in a bunch of law firms as filing papers and stuff like that. But I worked like cutting grass. I worked washing dishes in a restaurant.
How old were you at that job?
I was in college. I was in
Okay.
college when we did that stuff. Yeah. And, you did all that stuff. And, the other guys were waiters for years. And
Yeah.
my friend Paul Soder worked in a pen store for a long time, selling pens. We had all those jobs. It was, you end up using that. We wrote a movie called Slam and Salmon years later, and it was based on all the waiting stories that these guys had and that we all had working in restaurants.
What was your very first job, Kevin? Do you remember it? Was it like cutting grass or delivering newspapers?
I delivered newspapers when I was a little kid. I delivered newspapers and in my neighborhood, and then I got a job at the local golf course. Yeah, cutting grass and watering greens and stuff like that. So that was kind of the first job that I had.
Sounds kind of fun. I think that kind of sounds fun as a young guy.
The kids,
You know what I mean? So let me ask about Super Troopers 3. Here we are. It's in theaters today, nationwide. I can't believe it's here.
Me either.
And can you tell me a little bit about the movie without being a spoiler?
Yeah, no, the trick is to always come up with that story that you think is going to kind of generate a movie, and that's something that the fans want to see that they haven't seen yet. And so, We decided to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and see behind, see these guys' lives, their more personal lives. And we were kind of batting around this idea, which is just a stupid idea. We wwere sitting around. I was like, what if Farva, my character, the guy you love to hate, was sleeping with your sister? What would you do? And it kind of escalated from like, well, what if he was marrying your sister? Like, what would you do? And then we put it together with Jay's character, who I've always had a conflict with, and we turned it into this giant kind of Indian wedding situation. And so it kind of snowballed from doing this kind of a wedding movie. It became kind of like a meet the parents thing. And we started doing like, what's the Farva version of the bachelor party? What's the Farva version of, the fitting of clothes? What if you put Farva in a Bollywood dance number? And it kind of just grew from there. And it became this wedding movie. And, it's something that the fans hadn't seen before. Before it's more like, cop stuff and fooling around on the road and whatever. And now we kind of took it in this other direction where we meet people's families and stuff like that. So that we felt like that could generate the full movie.
Kevin, was the initial thought with all of this, it sounds like a blast. Like I just think about if I could hang out with my college buddies and drink beer and like it just sounds like a dream come true. Was the plan originally, I mean, maybe there was no plan, but was it like just performing, doing improv, or was doing movies and TV shows? What was the initial plan of Broken Lizard?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't think it was movies. It was basically we started as a sketch group and we did sketches at our Colgate University, and we would make fun of the local professor and the cop and the campus security, and it worked for us. And so we're like, let's keep this ball rolling. We moved to New York City, and then it was all about just doing live stage shows. But in the meantime, we're shooting these little videos, we're learning how to do that stuff. And then I think at that point after college, it became like, well, you know what, let's make movies. It was kind of the height of this independent movement where guys like Kevin Smith and Richard Rodriguez were making, Robert Rodriguez were making these movies that got into theaters. And so that became the plan. And so it kind of snowballed a little bit. And probably by the time we were fresh out of college, we thought we could try to make movies. And then you think, let's get our movie in one movie theater so that our friends could go see it. And then, here we are.
Wow. Yeah, I just feel like it's so overwhelming to me. Like, I was interested in film as a younger guy, but it was just so overwhelming. I was just like, I can't do this. I think
the beauty is having a group of guys. You know what I mean? It was like having your sounding board and the guys who motivated you. Is like having 5 guys made it a little more, I don't know, it kind of happened easier rather than if you were kind of struggling climbing the mountain by yourself.
Sure. I guess you've got that support too. Yeah. And if everybody's thinking they can achieve this one dream, this one goal, maybe you're just brainwashing yourself to think that it's going to happen, and you did it. And what about? I'm just thinking, and I asked the other guys, but maybe you have a different answer. Was there a moment in your life where everything personally changed for you? And I mean, maybe it's Super Troopers, maybe somebody giving you the phone call saying, hey, your movie's going to be made. Maybe it's, I don't know, getting recognized somewhere. But can you remember a moment in time where everything for Kevin Heffernan has changed for the better? Like, no looking back. Yeah. Things are going to be different from here on out.
Yeah, no, I think it was, when we sold Super Troopers. I think, we made it independently. We had made a movie previously called Puddle Cruiser that did not sell, and we didn't really know if our careers would happen. We all still had those other jobs. But then, we took Super Troopers to the Sundance Film Festival, and we did a screening that just played through the roof, and we had multiple offers on the movie, and we sold it. And we sold it to a movie studio. And a movie studio that put the movie out in 2,000 screens. And that was really the moment where we changed from like, can we do this, to like, oh, we did this. And I think that was the moment when things started to really turn for us. And, they put that movie out, and it wasn't, a wild success in the movie theater, but it really grew on DVD, and people started passing it around. And then you knew that, oh man, we got something here, we got some success.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
Initially, processing that had to be difficult. Like, wow, we sold the movie. It's going to 2,000 screens, but it doesn't do very well. So,
Yeah.
it's like, great. This is great. But when did you start getting the buzz? How long after the movie was in theaters were people recognizing you and the Super Troopers fan base starting to, get crazy?
Yeah, well, it wasn't even like that when it was in the movie theaters because it wasn't until we were in the heyday of the DVD era, which doesn't exist anymore. But
Right,
it was a
right.
time where the DVD area was exploding, and we were one of those movies. And so even though the movie came out in theaters and we did promotional tours and that kind of stuff, it wasn't until like a year later where people had been passing the DVD around and I remember like us walking down the street in New York City and someone like walking out of a bar and say, "Hey, you're the Super Troopers guys." And that was a slower burn. That was kind of after the point. And then once it started passing around, then you got this kind of cult feel and it started kind of growing. You could feel the, people throwing quotes at you and you're walking down the street or whatever it is. And, us getting out of speeding tickets, because cops were fans of the movie, that kind of stuff started happening, but probably 2 years after it. And then you knew you had something.
Did that ever happen to you? Did you get pulled
Oh,
over
yeah.
and the cop is like, wait a second. You tell me about that?
Yeah, it's happened a bunch of times. One of the funnier times I thought was we were promoting Beer Fest and we were all throwing out the first pitch at a Padres game just south of LA. And so I was driving down there and I was kind of late. I was going a little fast and I got pulled over, probably like 20 miles from the stadium. And the cop walked up and he said, where are you going in such a hurry? And I said, well, I'm going to throw the first pitch out at the Padres game. And he kind of looked at me. He's like, who are you to throw out the first pitch at a Padres game? And that's where I knew my moment. I could slide it in there. But I made a movie called Super Troopers. And he kind of looked at me and he went back to his car and he came back a few minutes later and he said, would you like an escort to the stadium? I said, yeah, I'd love an escort to the stadium. So he drove me to the stadium and I got there. And when I got there, there were a bunch of cops standing outside of the stadium waiting for us. And I said, what's going on? And the guy said, well, it went out over the radio that Farva got pulled over, and we wanted to make sure you made it in time. I was like, oh, thank you.
That's classic.
Yeah, so those are the times that you kind of resonated with a group there, and now it's very difficult for us to get speeding tickets. So
That's a great problem to have, though.
it is.
You're above the law, almost, almost.
Yeah.
Super
No murder,
Troopers,
speeding
Super
tickets.
Troopers 3. In theaters nationwide. I'm so excited. I'm a huge Super Troopers fan. I've talked to Lemmy before. I've talked to Chandrasekhar, now you. So I've got almost a complete set here. What's next?
Awesome.
What do you think? What do you think you're gonna do after Super Troopers? Is there another plan? Are you guys gonna do some Broken Lizard, maybe touring stuff, or do you have other movies ideas coming out?
Yeah, we have a couple of movies in the hopper. I think that we're going to try to get done. We've got like we've got various levels of budget too. We've got our sword and sandal comedy that maybe now with the Odyssey, there's an opening for that. We've got a movie where we play college professors. There's a couple of things that we got in the hopper, and then there's also Super Troopers 4, which we
come on,
we actually
really?
We teased at the end of this one. Because what we learned is if you put it in your movie, the studio has to make it. So literally, we teased Super Troopers 4, and we were sitting in a meeting with the studio execs, and they're like, are we making Super Troopers 4? We said, yeah, you guys are definitely making Super Troopers 4.
You have to now. I mean,
it's in the movie.
You can't do false advertising,
So,
Man, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So, I think, it'll depend. The idea is just try to get people to go out to the theater and see this one. Comedies haven't been doing that well in the movie theater. And so the idea was, let's get people to remember what it's like to go laugh in a crowd,
Well,
so
this should be kind of an easy one for the Super Troopers fan base to get out this weekend and go to the theater.
I hope.
No, I'm pretty sure. Kevin, I got to tell you, man, just again, a big fan. And Super Troopers 4. Wow, you heard it here first, but let's not put the cart before the horse. Super Troopers 3 is in theaters right now. And hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Have a good one, man.
You too, buddy.
So once again, if you're a big fan of the Super Troopers movies or the Broken Lizard comedy troupe, I got a lot more of an in-depth story about how all the guys kind of met in college and the early formation of the Broken Lizard comedy troupe when I spoke with Jay Chandrasekhar, episode 41, and Steve Lemmy, episode 178. Basically talk about how all the guys met in college and how they started performing at this gay club in the Village and how it took off. It's a really great story. So Kevin Heffernan, born in West Haven, Connecticut. His mother was the treasurer for West Haven. His father worked as a probate judge. His grandfather was the mayor of West Haven. He comes from a very prestigious family. You see how Kevin took a hard right-hand turn away from the family business, if you will. But he actually got his parents' support by putting them in some of the movies. You know, originally Kevin goes to Colgate University and then graduated from the Brooklyn Law School, passed the bar. I can definitely see the disappointment in both of his parents' faces when he came to them and said, hey, you know, I know you spent a lot of money putting me through college and law school, but I'm going to pivot here and make stoner movies with my 4 buddies from college. You know, he passed the bar exams for both Connecticut and New York, but he never practiced law. But I guess he still could if he ever decided to pivot again. But why would you at this point? So he kind of used his law degree a little bit before Broken Lizard took off. He said he did work in a few different law firms, filing papers, stuff like that. But early on, he said, you know, when he was a kid, he would, you know, cut grass. But he worked as a dishwasher at a restaurant when he was in college, and talked about some of the other guys in Broken Lizard, how they were waiters. And he said he took all of those experiences and they made the movie The Slam and Salmon. You know, obviously the original Super Troopers movie getting sold to Searchlight Pictures, that was the big break. It's like a major movie studio, and that's basically when everything changed. But initially, Super Troopers wasn't a big success in the theaters. Became a cult classic on DVD and tells the story about being pulled over by the cop when he's on his way to throw out the first pitch of a Padres game. The cop recognized him as Officer Rod Farva and then gave him the police escort to the stadium. Super Troopers 3 in theaters nationwide. Kevin Heffernan, Esquire. I mean, I guess he could still be an attorney, but at this point, why would you want to start working? Sounds like his current job with his 4 college buddies sounds like a lot more fun, doesn't it? Well, thanks again for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast, streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on all of them, so please hit that subscribe button. Would love a 5-star rating, and if you could, please leave a comment and or a review. You can also go back and listen to past guests and episodes on CelebrityJobber.com. Wednesdays, we do the Celebrity Jobber Rewind, where we highlight an older episode that you may have missed. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time here on the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. Until then, I'm Jeff Zito.